Some losses cut so deep they reshape your whole world. You know what I mean? You wake up every morning and it's like, do I fight or do I just let go? I remember that feeling like it was yesterday. And I'll tell you, for Catherine Bell, it never really got easier. She just got stronger. 2 years after losing her husband, she was running that Wyoming wheat farm like her life depended on it. Because it did, and every single sunrise was a gamble. Can I hold this all together one more day? I swear, some mornings she'd look out over those golden fields. Fingers wrapped tight around a chipped coffee mug, and it was all she could do not to give in to the ache and just let the wind have her. But then that stranger showed up, a big man with tired eyes and boots that looked like they'd walked through hell and back. No demand, no expectations, just 5 words that changed everything. I'll work for a meal. That's it. No name, no history, and honestly, Catherine's got every reason in the world to tell him to keep walking. She's been burned by kindness before. By neighbors like Henrik Len, the widower next door, who keeps offering help that sounds more and more like a proposal every week. But she looks at her kids, 8-year-old Samuel with those serious eyes, little Mary still dreaming about a father who's become more myth than memory, and she thinks, hell, maybe a miracle walks in boots, you know? Still, you don't survive out there by being soft, so Catherine gives him the barn and a plate of whatever's left, expecting nothing. That night, after the house goes quiet, she stands over Thomas's old farming journal, thumbing through pages full of weather notes and hopeful dreams, asking herself if trusting a stranger isn't just a new way to lose everything. Turns out, the man, he calls himself Elias Thorne, is exactly who he says he is, a worker, plain and simple. Next morning he's up before dawn, already fixing the water pump that's been on the brink for weeks. He doesn't talk much, doesn't pry, just fixes things, mends fences, repairs the plow. The kids start following him like ducklings, and even Bessie the cow seems to approve, which, if you know Bessie, says something. But you can't live in a small town without people talking. Henrik shows up, looking to check on the kids, but really he just wants to know who the hell this stranger is, moving about Catherine's farm. He gets that tone, low, almost threatening, like he owns a piece of her story. Catherine holds her ground, but inside, every fear about being a woman alone on a farm with 2 kids and a pile of debt comes roaring back. Still, day after day, Elias proves himself not with words, but with action. He teaches Samuel how to sharpen tools, helps Mary rescue a butterfly, even carves a wooden horse for the boy. The children start calling him Mr. Eli, and soon it's clear, he's filling a space in that family neither they nor Catherine wanted to admit was empty. One night, a storm tears across the prairie, thunder like cannon fire, lightning slicing the sky. Catherine finds herself battling wind and rain, trying to save the barn doors from flying off their hinges. And there's Elias, right there in the chaos, calming the horses, working beside her like they've done this 1,000 times. When it's over, they're soaked, exhausted, and Catherine realizes she doesn't want to face another storm without him. It's not all peace after that. Henrik comes around again, this time pushing hard, telling Catherine she's making a mistake, offering marriage as protection. She's got to choose, play it safe, marry the neighbor, or trust this man she hardly knows. The twist? Just when she's ready to let Elias fully into her life, he sits her down and confesses. Back in the war, he left his unit to be with his dying brother, technically desertion, even if the reason was love. There's a warrant, he says, and if the army ever comes knocking, he won't run. Won't bring trouble to her door. Now, that's a punch to the gut. Catherine's heart splits wide open. She knows what it means to choose family over everything. She takes the night to think. Walking up to Thomas's grave, reading the lines he'd written about hope and second chances. The next day, she finds Elias at work, just like always, and says, "You stay as long as you want. This is your home too now." But life isn't done testing them. One autumn morning, cavalry uniforms appear on the horizon. The lead officer's got a warrant, calling Elias by name, saying he's to be arrested for desertion. Catherine's fury boils over. She tells them to wait, digs out the letter from Elias's brother and the discharge papers he'd hidden for so long. The captain reads them, scowls, and finally, admits there's been a mistake. Elias is free. The cavalry rides off, but the farm is changed forever. The neighbors have seen it all. Some whisper, Some turn cold, but Catherine doesn't care. She's got her children, her land, and now this man who stood beside her through every test. Over supper, as dusk paints the wheat gold, Samuel asks if Mr. Eli will stay forever, and Catherine just squeezes his hand and says, "He's family, isn't he?" And as the sun sets, there's a hush, one of those perfect silences that come before you realize a story isn't really over, not ever. Maybe some folks in town will never approve. Maybe storms will come again, or the army, or whatever else the world can throw at them. But as long as they face it together, side by side, that's enough. Or maybe, just maybe, there's another chapter no one sees coming. You tell me, what would you have done? Would you risk it all for hope, for a second chance, even if it means breaking every rule written by men who never knew your kind of loss? I'd love to hear where you stand, because around here, right and wrong, well, it's not always as simple as folks make it out to be. If this story made you think twice about second chances, about what real strength looks like, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment. Let's talk about justice, forgiveness, and what it means to build a family from the ashes. Sometimes the most beautiful homes are the ones we build out of broken pieces. You ever notice how peace never lasts out here? You think you've made it through the worst, weathered the storm, cleared your name, maybe even started to believe in luck again. And then, just as you're about to exhale, life throws you another curveball. That's exactly how it went for us after that morning with the cavalry. You could feel it in the way the air changed. Neighbors who used to wave turned their faces. Whispers followed us in town, and even Samuel asked why Mr. Eli couldn't come with us to church on Sundays anymore. It was like, overnight, our little patch of hard-earned happiness had become a test case for everybody else's fears. But it wasn't the town that bothered me most. It was the silence between me and Elias in those first days after. He'd go about the chores like nothing happened, whittling fence posts, fixing harnesses, gentle as ever with the animals, but there was a heaviness in him. The kids noticed too. Mary kept bringing wildflowers and dropping them by his boots, hoping for that smile she loved, but more and more, he'd just pat her head and get back to work. Even Bessie seemed to moo with a little more caution. I guess that's the thing about carrying old wounds. Sometimes it's not the world that reminds you, it's yourself. One evening, after supper, I found Elias sitting out by the barn, staring off at the line of cottonwoods by the creek, whittling a tiny bird from a scrap of pine. "What's on your mind?" I asked, knowing full well that was dangerous ground. He looked up, and for the first time, I saw doubt there, real, bone-deep doubt. "I keep thinking maybe I've brought more trouble than I'm worth," he said, his voice low. "Maybe I should move on. Let you and the kids have a clean slate." And I'll tell you, in that moment, something snapped in me, like I was done letting the world decide what we deserved. You think running is going to protect us? After everything we've weathered together? This farm, these kids, me, we're not better off without you. Don't you dare write us off for the comfort of strangers who never lifted a finger to help. He was quiet for a long time, just that little bird turning over in his hands, rough around the edges, wings half-shaped. "I want to stay," he finally said, "but I don't want my shadow to swallow up your light." I almost laughed, bitter, but with relief. "You're not a shadow, Elias. You're the morning sun after 2 years of winter." It should have ended there, but nothing's ever that neat. A few days later, word came that a new land agent from Cheyenne was making the rounds, checking titles and back taxes. That'd be a non-event for most folks, but not for us. See, Thomas had left some debts, and the drought year meant we were always playing catch-up. Now, with Elias living on the property, and the neighbors still whispering, it wasn't long before someone dropped a letter in our mailbox, anonymous, naturally, accusing me of harboring a fugitive and neglecting the land. You ever get that feeling in your stomach, like ice and fire all at once? That was me, reading those words. I marched straight to the county office, letter in hand, ready for a fight. The clerk, young, nervous, looked at me with that mix of pity and suspicion small towns breed so well. "Ma'am, there's going to be an inquiry. I suggest you prepare your documents." No offer of help, just another door closing. That night, Samuel overheard us talking in the kitchen. He came out, eyes wide, voice shaking, and said, "Are they going to take our home, Mama? Is it my fault for telling Tommy at school about Mr. Eli?" Nothing prepares you for the heartbreak of seeing your own child blame himself for the world's pettiness. I knelt down, hugged him close, and said, "This is not your fault, sweetheart. This is about grown-ups who forgot what kindness means. We're going to stand together. That's what families do." And we did, at least, as best as we could. The weeks that followed were a blur of work and waiting. Elias never complained, but I caught him watching the road more than once, that old habit of a man expecting trouble. Mary started sleeping with her light on again, whispering prayers to her papa and to whoever else might be listening. Then, just when it felt like the whole world was watching, we had a surprise visitor, Henrik Len. Only this time, he wasn't puffed up with pride or pushing for marriage. He stood on our porch hat in hand, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "I heard what's happening," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Folks are saying a lot of things, most of them unkind. I just came to tell you. If you need someone to vouch for your character, I'll do it. I might have let my feelings get in the way before, but nobody should lose their home because of spite. Let me tell you, forgiveness comes in stranger shapes than I ever imagined." That night, after the kids were asleep, Elias and I sat on the porch under a sky so full of stars it almost hurt to look at. "Maybe the world isn't all bad," he said, voice gentle. "Maybe it just takes one person doing the right thing to remind the rest what matters. And that's the thing. Sometimes the real battle isn't against storms or soldiers or debt, but against the idea that you're alone in the fight. Maybe you win by standing your ground, or maybe you win by letting someone stand beside you, even if the whole town says you shouldn't." Harvest came late that year. The wheat was good, best in years, actually, but the inquiry dragged on, and every letter from Cheyenne felt like a new threat. Still, at every meal, there was laughter. The kind that comes from knowing the worst is behind you, even if the future's a mystery. I wish I could tell you how it all ended. If the farm stayed ours, if the town ever stopped talking, if Elias finally found peace under our roof. Truth is, some stories don't get tidy endings. Sometimes all you get is another day, another sunrise, and the people you love sitting close enough that the rest of the world can wait. So, let me ask you, when the odds are stacked against you, what do you fight for? Is it land, reputation, or just the right to choose who stands with you when the chips are down? Around here, we're still figuring it out. Maybe you've been there, maybe you're there right now. Either way, I hope you'll share what you've learned, because in the end, it's not about who's right or wrong, but who keeps showing up when the wind turns cold. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever had to defend your family or your choices against the world, I want to hear about it. Drop your story below. Let's remind each other why we keep holding on, even when the world tries to push us out.